What is good, New York Jets fans? In this video, I'm going to give you my mock off-season 2022 edition. I'm going to go through the cuts, free agency, trades, and the NFL draft. This is what I would do if I were in charge of calling the shots this off-season. We're going to enter the off-season with $48 million of cap space. That's per spot track. We can increase that quite a bit with three cuts right off the bat. Greg Van Roten and Ryan Griffin, pretty much replacement level guys at this point. We can save a $7 million combined by cutting them both. I think those are no-brainers. Not quite as obvious, Sheldon Rankins. Thought it was worthwhile to bring him in. He flashed a few times as a pass rusher, but was just god-awful against the run, and I think those $5.5 million in savings would be better spent somewhere else. I'm going to make some additional cuts, all on guys making less than $1 million. Chuma Edoga, athletically overwhelmed. Trayvon Wesco, a guy without a position. LaMichael Pirine, buried on the depth chart. Blake Cashman, always hurt. Cameron Clark, retired. This is going to give us a post-cut salary cap of $64 million, but I want a little more. So I'm going to call up CJ Mosley's agent. Hey, CJ, you did all that talk at the end of the season. You're a team first guy. Help us out here with your contract. I'm going to ask you to do exactly what the Packers just had Kenny Clark do, which is to take $10 million of your $16 million base salary for 2022 and convert that into a signing bonus. That'll give us $10 million of extra cap space, bumping it up to $74 million. But I want a nice even $80 million. So I'm going to ask Joe Douglas to go ahead and work some magic here, find us $6 million more dollars. Maybe that's asking Connor McGovern to take a pay cut. Maybe that's restructuring some of our higher cap figures like Carl Lawson or Corey Davis. But do some maneuvering to get us up to a nice even $80 million of salary cap space, of which, of course, we are going to need to reserve $18 million to sign our draft picks. We have 4 picks in the top 40, 2 in the top 10. It's going to cost us $18 million just to sign our draft picks this year. That's going to give us $62 million to re-sign our own guys and bring in some free agents from other teams. First, let's start by who we're going to let walk. Here are 4 notable pending free agents that we have that I'm going to just let sign with other teams, starting with defensive tackle Foley Fatukasi. I love Foley. A great locker room guy, great against the run. But with 3 of our top 5 biggest cap hits being players on the front 4, defensively, I think that we can spread some money to different positions of need and let Foley go ahead and get paid somewhere else. Wide receiver Jamison Crowder, solid pro, led us in receptions the past 3 years, but we have Elijah Moore ready to step into the slot role now. We're going to let Jamison Crowder walk. Safety Marcus May, almost 30 years old, coming off an Achilles injury. The weird franchise tagging situation, the DUI he had hid from the team. I think both he and the Jets are ready for a fresh start this offseason. Offensive tackle Morgan Moses did a solid job this year, but with Becton and Fant coming back as starters, he'd be too expensive to retain as a backup, and I think he'll be looking for starting work somewhere else. Now let's look at the guys who are pending free agents on our own team that I'm looking to bring back, starting with Braxton Berrios. You know we got to bring Braxton back. Pretty much the lifeblood of our offense down the stretch there with that anemic wide receiving group. We're going to sign Braxton to a 3-year, $22 million deal. May seem a little pricey for a wide receiver number 4, but he also brings a lot of value on special teams. I'm going to bring back quarterback Mike White as a backup. 2 years, $5 million seems about fair for him. Dan Feeney, not exactly a fan favorite, but he's got some versatility. He can play center and guard. And 1 year, $2 million feels fair to add some depth to our offensive line. I'm also going to sign Tevin Coleman, 1 year, $1.5 million. I wasn't thrilled when we signed him last offseason, but he had a lot more tread on the tires than I thought. He showed some good bursts. I think he's fine as a running back number 3. Here are some less notable re-signees. I'm going to bring all these guys back for around the vet minimum, 1 year, a little less than $1 million. Kicker Eddie Pinheiro, fullback Nick Bawden, defensive end Tim Ward, wide receiver Jeff Smith, who also plays special teams, defensive tackle Nathan Shepard, and defensive end Kyle Phillips. After we've re-signed all these players, we'll have $43 million remaining to go ahead and sign some free agents from other teams. Here are the 4 premier free agents I have us signing this offseason. Now, we don't see a lot of the flashy names. There's no Dalton Schultz. There's no Marcus Williams. But what I tried to do was spread this around and plug as many holes as possible so that we can go into the draft with a best player available mindset. First, I started by plugging the right guard position with Laken Tomlinson, guard, San Francisco 49ers, 3 years, $25 million. Pro Football Focus had him at a 75.9 last year. He also only allowed 2 sacks all season. He's familiar with the coaching staff, 28 years old. We can plug him into right guard and forget about the position for the next 3 years. Next, I'm going to sign Devondre Campbell, linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. Campbell had an absolutely phenomenal season last year. Pro Football Focus, 84.5. That puts him in the elite category, 111 solo tackles. He's big. He's fast. Only concern is a little bit of a one-hit wonder. Last year was his best year by far, but I'm going to bank on him being a little bit of a late bloomer, kind of like our own Demario Davis. Next, we missed out on Marcus Williams and Jesse Bates. We go with a little bit of a cheaper option at safety, Jordan Whitehead, safety from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to give him $6 million a year, 3 years, $18 million. Pro Football Focus had him at 74.9. 2 interceptions last year would have tied him for the lead on the Jets last season. So he's an immediate upgrade and a day one starter at safety. Tight end, we missed out on Dalton Schultz, and even some of the second tier options when I was looking at the Pro Football Focus projected contracts, guys like David Njoku and Zach Ertz were commanding $10, $11 million per year contracts. And I went with a little bit more of a value signing. And tight end Mo Alley Cox, 2 years, $11 million. Solid blocker, reliable hands. I'm not running out to get my Mo Alley Cox jersey anytime soon, but I think he's a solid number 2 tight end and more talented than anybody we had on the roster last year. This is a position that we're also going to need to address in the draft. After that first wave of free agency, we still have $15 million of cap space to work with. And here are some tier 2 free agents that I think could add some good depth to our team. And you'll see some familiar names. I'm going to go ahead and sign guard / tackle Tom Compton. 1 year, $2 million from the San Francisco 49ers. He was a backup there. He started 7 games for them last year. Really high Pro Football Focus score, but 4 sacks allowed in 7 games. He was a little overwhelmed in the playoffs watching him against the Packers pass rush. But I like the versatility. He can play guard, he can play tackle, and we need some depth on the O-line. So I think 1 year, $2 million is fine for him. Next is running back Rashad Penny, who is really under the radar, and I haven't seen much buzz about him in free agency at all, but he led the league last year in yards per carry. Didn't play the full season, but also had a really high Pro Football Focus score. I think 1 year, $3 million is fine for him. He and Michael Carter can be our running backs 1A and 1B, if you will. Next is linebacker AJ Klein. I am a Jets transplant living in Buffalo, so I watched a lot of Bills games this year. And whenever Milano or Trey Edmonds was out and Klein had to step in, he seemed like he did a really good job. A solid pro. He's going to understand his assignments. Low pro Football Focus score of 53. He didn't play a ton because the Bills play so much nickel. But I think 1 year, $1.2 million, he can come in and compete for Quincy Williams for that other linebacker spot next to CJ and Devondre Campbell. And finally, cornerback Arthur Marlette, 1 year, $1 million. He just brings some depth and I think some toughness to our team. We're going to address this position in the draft, but we have a really young cornerback room. And I think bringing in a vet who can add some depth like Marlette would be well worth the $1 million. He was always a really willing tackler, and he always played with a little bit of swagger that I liked. So we spent about 7 of that $15 million on these guys here, leaving us $8 million, which we are going to actually spend on a trade asset we have coming over from the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to trade for wide receiver Calvin Ridley. We're going to send our number 35 overall pick this year, our second rounder, as well as one of our 5th round picks of 2022. He's got a cap hit of $11 million, but we would also be saving the money we'd be paying those draft picks, which would be about $2.5 million, giving him a net cap hit of $8 million this season. And if you look, those are his stats from 2020. Obviously, he didn't play in 2021. Obviously, this comes with the caveat that the Jets have done their due diligence and Calvin is good to go. But this is our Stefon Diggs trade that we need to make to help our young quarterback, Zach Wilson. I don't want to end the year saying, I don't know if Zach Wilson can play because he was throwing to something called DJ Montgomery. Let's not do that. Let's leave no excuses and know if we have our guy, let's get him Calvin Ridley. Calvin instantly becomes our wide receiver number 1 on the outside with Corey Davis. You have Elijah Moore in the slot. Braxton Berrios is your wide receiver number 4, and then Denzel Mims still somewhat of a wild card. Now it is time for the 2022 NFL Draft. We have a whole bunch of picks, including 2 in the top 10. First is number 4 overall, and I have the Jets picking Kayvon Thibodeaux, edge rusher out of Oregon. Let's not get cute and overthink this. Let's not read everything that Daniel Jeremiah has to say about this guy. Jets fans, if you're worried about it, go to YouTube and just watch the dude play. He's a beast. He's going to be the most talented edge rusher we've had probably since John Abraham in 2005. 90-plus Pro Football Focus grade versus the run and the pass. Size, length, strength, athleticism, checks the boxes all across the board. Pair him with Carl Lawson. You slide JFM onto the inside with Quinnen Williams. And those are 4 guys who can consistently beat single teams. Next, we have the 10th overall pick. And I'm going with Ahmad Sauce Gardner, cornerback out of Cincinnati. I thought about trading this pick down to Pittsburgh to recoup the second rounder we sent to get Calvin Ridley and then maybe taking someone like McDuffie at 20, but I think the upside is just too high here. He's a legit number 1 corner. I mean, some ridiculous stats here. Never allowed a touchdown in 3 years as a starter. Gave up under 200 yards in 14 games in 2022. Long, athletic, 6'2". He's going to draw some comparisons to Antonio Cromartie. And I think he's got the athleticism and the ball skills that Crow had, but I think he's even more sound technically. Crow tend to lean on that athleticism a little too much. But here's our guy who could follow the number 1 receiver around the field. I'm sick of getting killed by Stefon Diggs twice a year. He can play across. Bryce Hall becomes your number 2 corner, Michael Carter in the slot, and then Brandon Echols moves into more of a depth role. We traded away one of our second-round picks, but we still have another one, number 38 overall. We wanted Trey McBride here, but I just don't see him lasting to 38. But that's okay. We get the second tight end off the board. That's Jalen Weidermeyer, tight end out of Texas A&M. 6'5", 255. He's a traditional wide tight end, inline blocker, reliable hands. The pro comp I've seen from him is Jonnu Smith, even though Jalen is a couple of inches taller. I think he, on day 1, can become our starting tight end, with Mo Alley Cox being our number 2 tight end and Kenny Yeboah sliding in as our 3rd tight end. Next, moving into the 3rd round, we signed a safety in free agency, but that position was so anemic last year, we're going to need to address it in the draft as well. We have Yusuf Corker, safety out of Kentucky, 5'11", 205 pounds. This quote here per WalterFootball.com has him as a reliable coverage safety in the deep part of the field. Teams view him as a free safety at the next level. So we have Whitehead at our strong safety position. We can bring in Corker to compete with Ashton Davis and Jason Pinnock for the free safety position. Let's round out the draft with our day 3 picks. We are going to need some depth on the offensive line. That's where I turn to in round 4. I'm going Taylor Mumford, guard, tackle, Ohio State. At this point in the draft, we're drafting for traits. We're drafting for versatility. That's what I'm doing here. He started at tackle and guard. Let's develop him, see if we could find a role for him. Same idea here with Obinna Eze, offensive tackle at a TCU. I really like the dependability here. Started 25 consecutive games, and Walter Football projects him as a backup swing tackle in the NFL, and we need one of those because we cut Chuma Edoga and we didn't bring back Connor McDermott. Next, round 5, we brought back Eddie Pinheiro, and I'm going to have him compete with Parker White Kicker, South Carolina, Walter Football had him as the number one rated kicker coming out this year, was 16 on 17 in field goals in 21, and he also made a 54-yarder. Finally, round 5, pick 159. We let Foley walk, so we're going to need to bring in a run-stuffing nose tackle, and that's exactly what Marquan McCall is. 6'3", 358, and projects as a rotational nose tackle who can be pretty stout against the run. Now that we're through free agency and the draft, let's go ahead and take a look at what our new depth chart will look like for the 2022 season. Starting off on offense, let's take a look at our quarterback room and offensive line room. We have Zach Wilson, Mike White, and James Morgan as QBs 1, 2, and 3. Moving into the offensive line, with the starters being George Fant, AVT, McGovern, Laken Tomlinson, and Mekhi Becton. And then we can see here the backups being Feeney, Compton, and then the rookies that we brought in. I know it doesn't look great thinking if our left tackle goes down, our blind side of Zach Wilson will be protected by this 4th-round rookie. But in reality, Mekhi Becton or George Fant, whoever's playing right tackle, will be the de facto backup left tackle. If George Fant goes down, Mekhi Becton would slide over to left tackle, and then you plug in Tom Compton at right tackle. And I think that's the strength of the offensive line as it looks here. There's not a ton of premier talent here, but there's lots of flexibility and versatility that we can move some pieces around. And even if there's injuries, do our best to get the 5 most talented guys on the field. Moving on to the skill groups on offense, wide receiver number 1 right away, Calvin Ridley, just brought him in. Corey Davis, outside of him, we got Elijah Moore in the slot, Berrios as the 4, Mims as the 5, and then Jeff Smith as a depth role and playing on special teams. At the running back position, we have Michael Carter and Rashad Penny as our 1A, 1B, with Tevin Coleman being the backup. Ty Johnson, I like Ty Johnson. I know we had that one game where he dropped like 1,000 passes in the first half alone, but outside of that, I think he's solid as a running back number 4, practice squad level player. And then tight end, we have the rookie Weidermeyer stepping in as our number 1 tight end, backed up by Mo Alley Cox, and then Kenny Yeboah, last year's rookie, to round out the tight end room. Moving on to the defense, D-line and linebackers. Really excited about this front 4. Carl Lawson and Thibs off the edge, John Franklin Myers and Quinnen Williams as our defensive tackles. The depth leaves a little bit to be desired here. Bryce Huff, to me, flashed in the beginning of the year as a pass rusher. He's got to get better against the run. And then we have Nathan Shepard, Jonathan Marshall, Kyle Phillips, and then the rookie nose tackle McCall that we drafted in the 5th round. Linebacking room, much improved. Devondre Campbell steps right in as a starter next to C.J. Mosley. I have Quincy Williams winning the battle with A.J. Klein to be the starter on the other side. And then the 2 rookies that we picked last year stay as backups / special team players. Finally, let's take a look at the secondary and special teams. We have Sauce Gardner right away as our CB1, playing on the opposite side of Bryce Hall. Michael Carter II is playing the nickel, moving Brandon Eccles to the number 4 corner. And then we have Arthur Mollett and Isaiah Dunn as our depth corners, Justin Hardee as our special teams guy, really, but he's listed as a corner. Safety, 2 new starters, the rookie 3rd-rounder Corker at free safety, and our free agent Jordan Whitehead at strong safety, being backed up by Ashton Davis and Jason Pinnock. Special teams, the only change we have here is at place kicker. Our draft pick takes the place of Eddie Pinheiro, and everything else stays the same. So that concludes my mock 2022 offseason. What moves did I nail? Where did I mess up? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.